the third film in the Alien franchise, Alien 3, having come after Alien and Aliens, had big shoes to fill, and what is pretty much agreed on universally is that it comes nowhere near close to captivating us like the first two did. But while it is no one's favourite, the movie does have its fans, especially with the assembly cut, which not only adds in deleted scenes, but changes whole ones entirely. Can Alien 3 be redeemed? So I'll begin by telling you the version I watched for this review. It was the extended version, known as the assembly cut, and the format I watched it on was the Blu-ray from the Alien Anthology BluRay set. I actually got this set with Alien Isolation when I bought that game. I found the picture quality to be top notch as you'd expect, with the movie being upscaled to high definition, but what let the viewing experience down was the sound mixing, with dialogue being too quiet so I'd have to turn the volume up to hear what someone's saying, and then during an action scene it goes to being too loud and I'd have to reduce it again. A pet peeve with a lot of Blu-rays released around this time that is not only slightly irritating but immersion breaking too. So Alien 3 picks up just after the events of Aliens, with Ripley, Newt, Hicks and Bishop safely in their stasis pods and the Sulaco on a return course to Earth. But quite literally out of nowhere and making no sense at all, there's actually an alien egg stuck to the ceiling for reasons. And out comes a facehugger which burns its way into one of the pods, and upon doing so sparks an electrical fire and the entire unit is jettisoned as an escape vessel. It then lands on the nearest planet, a prison colony named Fiorina 161, nicknamed Fury, a desolate hellhole of a planet containing a maximum security prison housing the scum of the Earth, or more accurately, the scum of Earth and its colonies. Here, a new alien is born and Ripley has to cooperate with the prison's inhabitants to kill it, before the company, Weyland-Yutani, arrives to take it back to Earth. So having watched Alien 3 around 2 or maybe 3 times before, my memory is that I basically hated everything about it. I found the aesthetics to be boring, dreary and miserable in its mud-coloured palette, as well as its religious themes not being my sort of thing at all either. I found the film's look and feel to be the most mundane and depressing thing in the world, especially after the bombastic, heroic satisfaction of Aliens and the dark, intriguing horror of Alien, especially when compared to the first, as this is again a single alien with no real weapons to fight it, retreading similar ground but not as well done, and a far less impressive backdrop. I remember feeling like ending myself after seeing it back then. Especially after the first time, which I distinctly remember being the original cut on TV, as I remember how they made the chestburster come out of a dog and was kinda traumatised and disturbed by that for a while. If you kill a dog in your movie, like, just fuck you. Joking aside, I think it's a very low and lazy way to try and make people feel something. I wonder how, but this entire scene is actually changed in the assembly cut to be an ox, which kneels over and dies before it erupts out. We do see some oxes, or is it oxen, I don't know, but we see some of them used to pull the escape pod out from the beach it lands off, so it would make sense. I don't know how they would even go about changing something that big in the film though. Did they do reshoots afterward, or did they film both then make their minds up later? I'm not sure. Being the extended cut, lasting for around 2.5 hours, I found pacing wise it just dragged on far too long, and I was halfway bored throughout most of the runtime. I thought the same about the first 2 films, but I wasn't bored during those. I just think the theatrical versions of them were just right when it comes to the way things flow. When it comes to characters, the film left a lot of fans, including myself, unhappy by killing off everyone but Ripley during the introduction where the pod lands. In the impact, both Newt and Hicks are both killed off screen. Bishop does return for a minute when Ripley plugs him back in to retrieve the flight data, but then unplugs him after and he is gone. I did like Bishop returning for this short part, even played by the same actor, and again later as a Weyland-Yutani employee to try and convince Ripley to give herself up. But knowing after everything Hicks and Newt went through in Aliens only to be killed off screen sours a lot of people, and is a huge shame and a missed opportunity in my opinion too. The new characters, namely the convicts, are not interesting or likeable at all in my opinion. They don't have anything to distinguish them from one another. Most of them are all dressed in drab featureless clothing, all bald, and don't show much charisma. There were a couple actors I did recognise, such as the one prisoner who was Roland Tembo in The Lost World, and the warden who I recognised as Mr. Rottweiler from that one episode of Bottom. Him and the Doctor Clemens were decent characters, but killed off abruptly. When things get rolling, we are left with Ripley, a guard, an inmate called Dylan I think, who was okay, and I actually think his death redeemed his character and was quite heroic, and one of the better moments of the film. And the rest of the prisoners, who are pretty much all the same, but I wasn't rooting for a bunch of rapists and murderers to survive, so I actually looked forward to them being killed off. And almost all do so, and in very gory fashion. There's quite a lot of blood in this film, more so than the last two combined, which gets me onto the special effects, which were perfectly serviceable for the time, except for one particular effect they used for some shots of the alien, which was a rod puppet of the alien superimposed over the shot, and it just looks awful, and people commonly mistake it for early CGI, it looks that poor. In behind the scenes footage, the puppet actually looks really good, but the effect they used to insert it into the movie hasn't held up well at all. So the main antagonist is a single alien like the first film, but unlike the first film, the xenomorph here has come from either a dog or an ox, depending if you watch the theatrical or assembly cut. But it has a different coloration, being a greyish brown, and has a different posture, running on all fours instead of bipedal. The first time we actually see a xenomorph take traits from a different host, something we see expanded upon a lot in the franchise's future. I did say earlier that the alien getting on the Sulaco makes no sense, as there's just a random egg stuck to the ceiling. The Queen couldn't have laid it and put it there, as we see her every moment she is on the Sulaco at the end of Aliens. And then once that egg's facehugger has burned into the pods and infected Ripley, where does the second one come from that's facehugged the ox? People say the one on the ox is a royal facehugger which can lay eggs in two hosts, but we see the first one in the intro is a normal facehugger, so your guess is as good as mine. Might be an interesting topic to get into in a future video. I also thought the way the dog alien is defeated at the end was actually very cool and quite creative, as well as Dylan sacrificing himself to be done well. I found the film's ending to be a bit abrupt however, and not very satisfying, but it does close things and brings Ripley's story to an end. Whether or not you like how it ends though depends. Me personally, I'm not a fan of this film's story, and I think it's a shame that Neil Blomkamp's proposed Alien movie never got made, as it would have replaced Alien 3 and acted as the true sequel to Aliens. I thought from the concept art it looked like a very interesting idea, and even if not as good as Alien and Aliens, would almost certainly have been superior to Alien 3. So in my opinion, I found Alien 3 to be a fairly boring film which fails in most ways where the first two succeeded. I didn't like the plot, pacing, setting or characterisation, but what I did like were the alien itself, and there were admittedly a few cool moments I mentioned before. But on the whole, it is leagues behind both Alien and Aliens. I give Alien 3 a 4 out of 10, not as bad as I remember, but not that good either. Thank you for watching my review and I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like it for the time and effort it took me to make. Next review will be Alien Resurrection, arguably the lowest point in the series' history, so subscribe if you don't want to miss that one. Thanks again and I'll see you next time.